All right, I see that the Zoom room is filling up with attendees. Welcome to Football Letter Live. We will be getting started in just a couple of minutes. Go ahead and let us know who you are and where you're zooming in from. We have a great program lined up tonight. We are going to be talking with John Urschel, Penn State legend of the math world. John will be with us here for most of the night, for most of the episode here on Football Letter Live. And so we are looking forward to talking to him and reconnecting and sharing his story. I see Roger Williams joining us, class of 73. Roger was a guest on last week's Coffee Hour, our homecoming edition of Coffee Hour. You can check that out at alumni.psu.edu/events, and you can see all the archived virtual programs and check out Roger Williams and his coffee hour that we did with him. If you want great behind the scenes history of the worst presidents in Penn State history, tune into that, because Roger tells you who was good and who wasn't on that episode. So it's good to see him on Football Letter Live here tonight. Tanya from Springfield, Joe from Landing, New Jersey. I see Russ up in Syracuse. Russ is a regular. Good to see you again. Drew and Lynn from right here in State College. Lynn Marie DiCarlo, parents of a first-year class of 2024 student. Welcome to Football Letter Live. I hope your student is having a fantastic time here in Happy Valley. Judy and Dan from Minnesota.
Hey, Judy and Dan.
We had a great time up there right up until, well, I would say the last 6 minutes of the game, right, John?
Right.
I still think it was a touchdown. The one that they called back. Yeah.
Oh, that one of Journey Brown's that got called back. Yeah.
Where else would you rather be than a Zoom full of Penn Staters? I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and welcome to Football Letter Live. Here, it's 8 o'clock, it's Thursday, and it's time for Football Letter Live. Tonight, we welcome Alumni Achievement Award honoree and Penn State Letterman John Urschel. As always, live closed captions are available for this event. You can access them by clicking the closed caption button at the bottom of the Zoom video window and then clicking show subtitles. You can also customize your caption view by clicking the stream to text link posted in the chat. Tonight, I'm joined as always by the legendary editor of the Football Letter, John Black. John is with us. How are you tonight, John?
I'm fine, Paul. I hope you are too.
I am doing just great. We are recording this session, and if you have a question for John Black or John Urschel later in the show, make sure you ask that question in the Q&A box. But John, football, it's starting, and we have made the decision on Football Letter Live. We were only planning to do 10 weeks of this, but with the excitement of Penn State football starting, we're going to keep going. As long as Penn State football keeps playing, we will keep having episodes of Football Letter Live. And so we are excited to announce that we are going to extend it through at least December 17th and maybe even a bowl, maybe even a national championship edition of Football Letter Live.
Right.
So we're very excited about that. So John, what's going on now? It's season opener. It's game week for you. So you're probably buckled in and focused on Indiana.
Yeah,
What should we be looking at?
Well, I'm going to be looking at the television screen first of all, because that's the way we've got to do the reporting. But yeah, there are certainly a lot of things to be considered here. I think that Indiana, while we have such a big edge in the series, 22-1. Indiana has always played us tough, particularly these last couple of years. The games have only been decided by a touchdown or less. So it's always an exciting game against the Hoosiers. And I think we're going to have to, our defense, I think, is going to have to control a very potent passing attack by Indiana this year. Michael Penix, their quarterback, missed half of the season last year, but he completed 1,300 yards and 10 touchdown passes, and has a great couple of wide receivers, particularly Wap Fillier, who caught 70 passes for over 1,000 yards. One of the leaders in the Big Ten Conference. So we've got to control their passing game. That was Penn State's weakest point last year, was the pass defense. So I think that's the key for us. On the other hand, on our offensive side, we all heard about the loss of Journey Brown, at least for this game, possibly for much, if not all, of the season, for an unidentified medical issue. But that takes the leader of our running core out of the box there. It makes Noah Kane the leading returning rusher with about 455 yards last year. So Noah Kane and Devin Ford are going to have to make up for the loss of Journey Brown, and they're going to have to quickly assume the leadership in that running backs room. And I think that's going to be the key. If we can play strong enough in the running game to complement Sean Clifford and some new wide receivers, two of whom will be starting for the first time this year. That'll be the key offensively for us. So that's what I'm looking for, is the keys to the game.
Yeah, the crushing news of losing Journey Brown is devastating for this game, maybe longer. I know it's something that him and his family are concerned. It's a fairly serious condition that they want to keep their eye on. But if we were going to lose somebody at a position, running back is the position that we would choose to go, because the cupboard is so deep there with Noah Kane and Devin Ford, and I know they're high on the freshman Holmes and Lee, Kevon Lee, who has done well in some preseason practice. We have a freshman slated to start at wide receiver in Parker Washington, and so that's the area of the team that I'm most concerned about. Jahan Dotson, I believe, is the leading returning receiver at the wide receiver position. Obviously, we have Pat Fryermuth coming back, but concerned about the wide receiver position for sure.
Yeah, they're going to have to mature in a hurry, just like those freshman running backs backing up Kane and Ford may have to mature in a hurry, just like Kane and Ford themselves did last year. We're looking at several areas where we're deep. Wide receiver doesn't happen to be one of them, but running back, and on defense, we lost, of course, our leading defensive player, an All-American Micah Parsons. So we're entering the season, unfortunately, without our top defensive player and our top offensive player. But indeed, those position groups are two that are packed pretty well with the depth. So hopefully we can overcome the loss of those two leaders.
Absolutely. Jesse Luketa looks to step right in there in the absence of Micah Parsons. But I was actually on the phone with my father just the other night, and we were both lamenting that it's the Cotton Bowl offensive and defensive MVPs that we are looking to replace. And so on paper at the beginning of the season, we have those two coming back for another season, and now the team looks a little different, but I have no doubt Coach Franklin will have them prepared to compete, and again will represent the university really well. Indiana, it's a trap game. You mentioned it. We don't always bring our best game when we play Indiana, and with Ohio State just on the horizon. I
Right.
hope that our eyes remain on Indiana, Indiana, Indiana all
They,
week.
they have to. They have to. We can't worry about next week's game. I find it interesting, though. I think that the Big Ten's lineup, so far as television, they're obviously looking at the typical lineup in the Big Ten East this year with Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan as the top contenders. And that's why they're putting Penn State and Ohio State game in their prime time slot next week, 7:30 p.m. On ABC is the prime time show. And at the same time, they're going to be matching up Nebraska and Wisconsin in the West Division. I think they're the powers that be are maybe thinking they are the two leaders in the Western Division this year. Nebraska has to start off against Ohio State on Saturday. So if they should be able to pull out if they should happen to pull out an upset, then that really sets up next Saturday, the following Saturday's game. And that will be the prime game on Fox Sports 1, who, of course, does their prime telecast in the early afternoon game. So it's just interesting how things are shaping up pretty quickly and what the Big Ten thinks of in their schedule for the big games of each week.
It's been fun and interesting to follow social media throughout the start of the football season. It's been well documented. A number of families on the Nebraska team attempted to sue the Big Ten to play, and the Big Ten rewards them with Penn State and Ohio State on their schedule as their crossover Eastern opponents.
Yes.
But they are playing. I mean, look, on paper, Nebraska was really, really hopeful for this season, and so that key opening game against Ohio State and then Wisconsin within their division will be it's a tough schedule in the Big Ten. So I don't know that anyone should be complaining about who gets to play who, but we'll see if Nebraska's for real after their first two games.
Right.
Yeah. And I also think it's interesting. I see the opening week schedule. I think Michigan opens with Minnesota. So two ranked teams, Minnesota coming off of a historic season last year for them.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. So again, it's good to be talking about actual football and the season starting here. So
it is. It's exciting.
Absolutely. So we are going to talk some more football. Why don't we welcome in our guest tonight on Football Letter Live and welcome John Urschel into the program. John, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
We're great.
We're fantastic.
I heard you guys chatting a little bit. I got to say, Indiana is sort of the game that I feel like, coaches always sort of worry about, this game against a good opponent that is sort of, sometimes underrated and right before sort of a very big game. This is the sort of game that gives like coaches nightmares, I feel.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. John, where are you joining us from tonight?
I'm actually joining from Washington, D.C. right now. So.
Okay. Excellent. It's hard to keep track of where you are. A student at MIT. I know you have a lab here in State College and you have connections to the Metro DC area and Baltimore area. So it's always good to find where John is. John, let's start right at the very beginning of your Penn State journey. How did you become a Penn State Nittany Lion?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So I came out of Buffalo, New York, and at the time I wasn't a very highly recruited player. And sort of right around January, right before signing day, Penn State made me an offer. Stanford made me an offer. And I just went down to Penn State and somehow I just fell in love with the place. And it wasn't just the football team and sort of the football environment, but just interacting with the students, interacting with actually the people who just lived in the community, like the people I would meet, going to restaurants downtown, just seeing the environment. I just absolutely fell in love with the place and I committed on the spot. So
we've been glad to have you ever since.
Absolutely.
Excellent. I think we're going to hear a little bit about Stanford, maybe a little bit later in the interview. But
Right.
talk about your initial interactions with Coach Paterno and in the recruiting process.
Whew. I can tell you when so I'm there, I'm visiting. At this point, Paterno he's further along in his career, so he's not really traveling as much to,
Right.
make visits to houses and things like this. And so the first time I meet him is on my visit weekend. And I was told, just go up to him, talk to him, introduce yourself, give him a firm handshake, and let him know that you'll be sort of coming to play for Penn State. This is what one of the assistant coaches told me. And, sort of 17-year-old John, I'm quite nervous about this because I grew up watching Big Ten football, and sort of my dream was to be an offensive lineman in the Big Ten. And so Joe Paterno, I'm very, very nervous. I walk up to him. I introduce myself. I say, "Hi, I'm John Urschel. I'm a recruit from Buffalo, New York. I'd like to let you know that I'll be coming to play football for you." And he sort of looks at me and he says, "I know who you are." And he says, you go to, and he names my high school. He says, "You go to Canisius High School, a
Right.
Jesuit school, just like me." And he said, "I've watched your film. You're a tough football player. You're smart. And I can tell by looking at your grades and by talking to sort of my assistant coaches, you have exactly what we want at Penn State.
Right.
You have the right work ethic. You have sort of the right intangibles." And he said, "You're going to be a great player for us. And mark my words, you are going to be a captain for us."
Wow. Wow.
And I sort of just look at him like, first of all, I didn't think Paterno was even going to know my name or know anything
Right.
about me,
Yeah.
let alone tell me that, I'm a player that he really thinks could be sort of valuable for the team. And I can tell you, when the year I came to Penn State, I was the 7th offensive lineman they took that year.
Yeah.
Taking 7 offensive linemen in 1 year, just like, this generally just doesn't make sense. And you typically, obviously, at least 2 of those people are not going to be players for you. And so as a 2-star recruit added very late, I sort of recognized that from the outside in, there weren't sort of many expectations for me. But hearing that from Paterno, it really had a big influence on me, I can say. And
Joe was very insightful, John, with
Yeah.
his comments. You've brought as much glory to Penn State as perhaps any player we've had. Winning that the academic Heisman Award, the William Campbell Trophy as the outstanding student athlete in all of college football that year, and winning the Sullivan Award for the amateur athlete, top amateur athlete, and you've just brought out a lot of great things to Penn State, and we appreciate that.
No, I really appreciate it. And I can say that, Penn State football, the years I played there, it's just such a special place and such a special sort of like environment. I can tell you that one thing that just struck me was that somehow, like, when I came and first started at Penn State, I really was not sort of like a heralded recruit. Like,
No.
there was not, a lot of fuss around me. But from the moment I got there, I was in a situation where all the coaches sort of believed in me and believed that I was a player that could really succeed in this program. And I can say the strength and conditioning coach at that time, John Thomas, we call him JT, he was someone who believed that I was the best offensive lineman of our group. And he was
Great.
determined every single day during my freshman year,
Yeah.
sort of make me into the player that he knew I could be. And so I can tell you that Penn State I was at the exact right place that I was supposed to be.
That's good.
Now, John, you also came to Penn State with 2 passions, right? You came to Penn State to play football, but you also came to Penn State to pursue a degree. You had a passion for STEM and mathematics and engineering and everything else that you've studied at Penn State. Talk a little bit about the 2 passions that you brought to Penn State, and were they complementary? Were they dueling? How did you kind of compartmentalize those?
Yeah, so ever since I was sort of very little, I've always been interested in sort of like mathematical type things. And okay, when I came to Penn State, I started out majoring in engineering. I eventually switched to math, but I just, I've always been interested in that sort of thing. And I really do think that it's a great compliment, this sort of concept of being a student athlete, because one sort of gives you a break from the other. And it's sort of, I have to say, you just get this nice balance of being able to play sports and playing sports at a very high level, but also getting to go to what is one of the top universities in the world and really get a quality education, and to be given the sort of resources and time to be able to do that. I can say, once I got to the league, talking to other players in the league about their institutions and the situations they were in, I can tell you that there's a real reason why Penn State's graduation rate is so much higher than everywhere else, because there are these things put in place that are just meant to help you succeed. I mean, when I was playing, if you had to take a class that conflicted with practice or conflicted with meeting time, you're going to class. You're taking that class because sort of academics matter. When you first get there, you have study hall that they put you in, where they teach you really sort of how to study, how to learn, how to not just be responsible on the football field, but be responsible in the classroom. And I can say that they really make sure that they take care of every single player academically. I know Todd Kulka, and at the time when I was there, Brady Rourke as well. These are things that they take very, very seriously. As far as they're concerned, you're there for academics. So
That's right. And you turned out to be not only an outstanding offensive guard and a captain, but you got your bachelor's degree and your master's degree, and were actually teaching math classes before you left the team. So
yeah, I mean, this is the sort of thing where, okay, I go to at the time I was going to Brady and Todd, and I was asking them, do you think it'd be all right if I teach a course? And of course they have to, they check with NCAA, is this allowed? Is this okay? They're sort of checking all the rules, making sure everything is fine. But it turns out this is, it's unusual, but perfectly okay. And a couple times I did have to miss, I think, 2 practices to give evening exams to my students. And
right.
This was perfectly fine. So,
John, I recall when I read your book, it always seems like in the math world, you were 2 steps ahead of where everyone else your age was at the time, right? I remember the story about you becoming a tutor over at Buffalo over at UB,
yeah.
and you were taking calculus because it wasn't that level math wasn't offered at your high school. And then you were turning around and tutoring your classmates as a 16-year-old. Tell that story.
Yeah. It was funny. It was the summer after 8th grade. So right before I go into high school. And it's sort of it's a weird thing. When I was a kid, the thing I would love to do, so my mom and my dad, they sort of divorced when I was very young. And my dad, he really worked a lot. He was a thoracic surgeon and a very successful one. And so when I would go visit him, what we would often do is we would go to a bookstore, and he would do his work in the coffee shop, and he would just let me go wherever I wanted in the bookstore. And we would stay there for like a couple hours, like 2 or 3 hours. And then afterwards, he would like go buy me something from like the food court. And so while he's doing his work in the coffee shop, I would always go to the math and like physics section, especially the math section. And I would just pick up math books in Barnes and Nobles or chapters. I mean, we were in Canada, so usually it's chapters. And I would just read through them. And so I just ended up teaching myself a bunch of math, like all the way through my childhood. Like somehow I learned algebra, I learned trigonometry and like sort of geometry and things like this, like by the time I was in middle school. And it's not, I don't think there's actually, it sounds amazing because it's much sooner than most people learn it, but I don't think, I don't think there's anything that stops someone from learning these things in middle school. It's just having a time and an interest. I was just interested in it, so I spent more time with it. So I got to sort of more advanced things sort of sooner. And sort of by the time I was done with 8th grade, I was functionally at a level where I was ready to take calculus. And my mom wanted to send me to an engineering summer camp. And my dad thought, no, why don't you just sit in on a class? I'll register for it. My dad was retired at the time, and he was sort of going back to school and taking classes at the University of Buffalo. And so he sort of said, I'll just sort of enroll you as a listener through my sort of degree. Do the assignments, you can hand them in, you get them graded, all these things. And he said that this would be just a great experience for me. And it was. I absolutely loved it. I mean, at the time, I was a big kid even back then. So no one sort of thought I wasn't in college. And I was good at calculus. So definitely no one thought I wasn't in college, because I was quite helpful. I was helping other people in the class with things. And it was just a great experience for me, I have to say.
Well, John, after completing your time at Penn State, you were drafted by the Baltimore Ravens, and you had a very promising NFL career ahead of you. But early on, after just a couple of seasons, you decided that you should retire from professional football and seek your future in the world of math, probably instead. What do you think that was the right decision for you, and why did you make that decision?
Absolutely. So first of all, it's a weird mix of like really enjoying my 3 years in the league and enjoying my time sort of playing football at the highest level, but also thinking that was probably exactly the right amount of time for me to play 3 years, get vested, get my pension. But right before that 4th year, that 4th year is right when I became a father. This is when I was sort of getting further along in my PhD at math. And all of a sudden, I came to realize that once I was sort of like honest with myself, the most important things in my life, like my sort of list of priorities, now became my daughter, my PhD in math at MIT, so that I can become sort of like a very strong math professor and make, real contributions in math, and then football. And if somehow football is further down on that list than all these other things, but yet football takes up all this time, and quite frankly, every time you go out on the field, you're putting yourself at risk. If somehow this is not as high of a priority as it used to be, then this is not something I should be doing. And so that was really the thought process, I can say.
So, John, you mentioned that you were a fan of Big Ten football, that you were well aware of kind of Penn State's history when you came here, and you came and you started competing, and you played for Coach Paterno, and then 2011 happened, and I don't want to go into kind of, everyone knows the story, but what they might not know is, you had options in 2011, right? The NCAA threw the gates open and said players can transfer whenever they want, wherever they want, with no penalty. And certainly you were contemplating things, right? So when you left the Baltimore Ravens, that wasn't the first time you thought about not playing football. Talk a little bit about your decision and kind of your thought process to stay at Penn State.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a time where, first of all, I was at a crossroads, because I was actually at a very similar crossroads, I can say, because I had finished my first 3 years. I redshirted my first year, so I had 2 years of eligibility left. In that 3rd year, I got a lot of play time. I did not start, but I split every game 50-50 with a 4th year senior who played the 1st and 3rd quarters, and I played the 2nd and 4th at guard. And I was at a place where I graduated, and in math, typically after you get your undergrad degree, it's actually not so natural to get a master's degree. What you typically do is you get your undergrad degree, and then you apply to a PhD program. And so I was at this weird crossroads where if I was just doing math, then would be the time to apply to a PhD program. But if I was to stay at Penn State, I wouldn't apply for a PhD because, well, it's usually good to go do a PhD somewhere else other than where you did your undergrad. It's good to get sort of a different situation. And so I thought about what would be best for me. Should I go and do this PhD, or should I keep playing football and just sort of like get my master's and, you know, take some classes to figure out what to do? And so what I thought about was, I thought, yes, I'm going to keep playing football. And I'm also going to apply to a couple places to see what my options are, just in case. So I applied to Northwestern, I applied to Stanford, and the idea is I can go to these places and I can play football or I cannot play football. This is sort of my option. And so I hear back from both, especially I hear back from Stanford. I applied for a master's program and they asked me to apply for the PhD program instead.
Right.
They give me a sort of very nice fellowship where my whole sort of everything is paid for. I don't have to teach or anything. And I get a stipend of like $30,000 a year.
Wow.
And so, you know, as a football player, you think this is quite nice. And they said, on top of that, if you want to walk onto the football team, you can. We don't care if you play football here or not. And so I'm thinking about this. I think, oh, this is kind of nice. And eventually I say, no, I'm going to sort of stay at Penn State. I think this is the best decision for me. And then they call me up and they say, okay, are you coming out here? And I say, no, I don't think so. And they say, at least come and visit, at least come for the weekend. And so they bring me down for the weekend. They put me in this like beautiful sort of like villa, you know, do all these sort of like very nice things for me. And I was really sort of trying to decide what's the best thing for me to do here. And I got back from my visit and really I realized when it was really not even any sort of big thing, but I get back and I'm just hanging out with my best friends. And I'm just sitting, I'm hanging out with, you know, like Ty Howell, like Glenn Carson, all my best friends in the world, like all my teammates. And I realized, like, no matter objectively how good of a situation this is for me at Stanford, like how good this is for me academically, like this is something that like transcends academics, athletics. Like I can't leave my friends. Like these are the people who depend on me. These are like the most important people like in my life. Like I can't leave. And so this is sort of how I came to the conclusion that no, I need to stay.
That's amazing. And then you decide to stay.
Yeah.
And then you meet Bill O'Brien and your team. The movie The Iron Lions, I think, says it the best. The greatest 8-4 team in the history of college football. But you went, and I don't mean this in any kind of pejorative way, but you went from being a guy who was going to be a beloved guy who went to school here and played guard and did well in school, did well in his classes, to now you're one of the guys that saved Penn State football. You, Michael Maude, Matt McGloin, right? Your status by making that decision has gone to kind of legendary in the mind of and the hearts and minds of Penn Staters. So talk about that season, talk about Bill O'Brien, and kind of, with your appreciation of Penn State football history, that you're one of the names that now people talk about as part of that history.
No. I am not. No. I am not one of the names. I can tell you that there is a long list, a very, very long list of sort of Penn Staters doing things the right way, both on the field and off the field. And I can tell you that this is something that was immediately obvious to me from the first time I stepped foot sort of like in the Penn State football building. You sort of, at least back then, you saw it through the level of continuity that we had at Penn State. The idea that, okay, I can say, these days in college football, and even when I was coming out, it was this sort of thing where, a coach is at a school, he's at a university, he's at a team, who knows where he's going to be in 3 years? Who knows where he's going to be the coach of, who knows sort of where his assistant coaches are going to be in a couple of years? Who knows who's going to be in charge of this or in charge of that? But being at Penn State football, I saw that there was this strong continuity that people want to work here, people want to be here, and they want to stay. That this isn't just some stepping stone to the next big thing. This is really a family and a community. And through that, you saw this sort of continuity of Letterman. Somehow there was this connection, no matter when someone played. We all had this deep connection because we all went through the same things. We all knew the same people, and we all knew what was expected of us. And the things that were expected of the players who were playing for Paterno in his first season are more or less the same expectations he had for us when I came. And that sort of continuity really brought us all together, irrespective of generation. And the longer I was at Penn State, the more I had an appreciation for just the long line of amazing student athletes that came before me, came before all of us.
Well, John, you're being way too humble. You are absolutely one of the definitions of success with honor. But you're absolutely right as well. Like it's a continuation of a long history of Penn Staters making contributions on the football field and then making an impact out in the world. And you talk about that continuity. I'm virtually sitting next to a guy who dedicated his entire life to Penn State, and John Black. John, you came as a student and never left, and so that continuity there, and you see it all over campus. People want to be here because there's something else. There's something else about this place that keeps people here.
John, tell us a little bit about the book that you've written and what motivated you, and what did you hope readers would gain from it?
Oh yeah, I did write a book with Penguin Press, and this is sort of a memoir of sorts. And the real goal was, first of all, to share my experiences up to this point, and if I'm going to be perfectly honest, introduce people to math in a way that they might not be used to seeing it. Like, yes, this is memoir. Yes, I'm talking about my experiences in football and math, but you don't really need to sell people on the football part. But I think often people's experiences of math can be quite negative, and it's really based off mainly the quality of teacher they had in high school, the way material was taught, the sort of how math was viewed in their household growing up. And I can say that one thing I wanted to do was introduce people to some of the sort of more beautiful and some of the wonder of mathematics through my book. So that, okay, I'm not trying to say that someone's going to read my book and they're going to decide, okay, I'm going to become a mathematician, but maybe just a different view of math and a little bit of an appreciation. So that was my main goal.
It sounds like, I can say, in one sense, you're trying to make it more of a fun experience and an enjoyable experience for the readers. Do you get feedback from students and their parents about the book?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been really happy to see all the positive feedback I've seen, especially about sort of how people think more positively about math. One thing that was completely unintended that I have to say, so when I wrote the book, I sort of went on this national circuit and I went on a lot of shows. And one thing a lot of people said to me sort of behind the scenes was that somehow like hidden in this book was like a walking advertisement for Penn State. And this was completely non-intentional. This is not something that I was trying to do, but non-Penn State people who read the book thought, John, you're making Penn State sound like this magical place where, everything is fantastic and it's the single best place to be. Like right. Penn State can't be this nice. That's actually the response I got from a lot of like people.
Well, I've read it. I love how you went back and forth chapter to chapter between your life as a football player and your life as a mathematician. But I read it and I'm like, we couldn't have written better advertising for Penn State. I mean, this is this is the best. We need to get this into the hands of all prospective students, right? And they'll all come here.
particularly
Uh,
if they're interested in math.
Absolutely. But John, making math fun, making math accessible, diversity in mathematics at all levels has been something that you've been passionate about. Talk about your work in that area and opening up STEM to be more inclusive and equitable.
Yeah, I can tell you that this is an issue that's not just in math, but in a lot of STEM fields, but I can talk specifically about mathematics. If you look at, let's just say, I just want to do a little thought experiment to sort of understand the background of what I'm saying. If you look at the top math professors, let's say at, your MIT, your Stanford, your Harvard, your Princeton, whatever, and you look at their background, and let's restrict ourselves to Americans so it's easy, you'll start to notice certain characteristics about them. And one thing you'll notice is that they sort of fall sort of like disproportionately along certain like socioeconomic classes, among other sort of characteristics.
Right.
And you have to ask yourself, are all the like most brilliant mathematical minds in this country being born like decently, having decent wealth, being born in areas with strong school systems, quite frankly, being born male, and sort of all these things. And sort of, I hope the obvious answer is no, that concept is like ridiculous. And if you sort of recognize that idea is inherently somewhat ridiculous, then you're sort of left with the sort of sad realization that somehow there are sort of strong factors sort of at play in our country that happen between the time a baby is born, really sort of through by the time they get to high school, that sort of determines whether or not someone has the opportunity to be sort of strongly successful, let's say, in math or in the sciences, just focusing on this. And so a lot of the work that I try to do is to try to encourage especially people from underserved communities, that math is for them, that math is important, that math is something that can really set you up for a successful career in life. And this is one thing that I've been happy to sort of be involved in, especially at MIT. At MIT, we have a program where every summer we bring highly intelligent, highly talented high school students who come from underserved areas. So areas where, they aren't going to some super, power like high school. Perhaps they come from an area which does not have access to, nearby universities for advanced coursework or whatever it may be. And we all bring them to MIT and we put them through this intensive sort of 2-week mathematical program, and seeing what these kids are capable of from the first day they come versus the last day they leave. Like when you see these things firsthand, you really come to understand how important it is that our strongest students in this country, irrespective of background, have the best resources and have strong resources, and to just see what these students are capable of. Because when strong students have sort of a lack of opportunity, it doesn't just hurt them, it hurts us. It sort of hurts everyone, because we're lacking this sort of like strong STEM talent base.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. John, I think about you were in the league at about the same time as Colin Kaepernick. And when Colin's time playing time ended the way it did, I think about that time and I think about today and the platform and the voice that our student athletes, that NFL athletes have found in a way, talking about social justice and the injustices that they face. We just recently announced here at Penn State that we're going to be wearing a unity patch on our football uniform. I think we have an image of that. Yeah, I'm gonna try to pull that up here, but you can see it on the screen there, and it's actually behind me a little bit here. But talk a little bit about student athletes finding their voice and using the platform of whether it's professional sports or college sports to talk about the things that are important to them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a weird thing, I have to say, because as athletes, yes, we're these sort of high performing sort of, athletes doing these things on the field, but we're people who have our own beliefs, our own sort of morality, and sort of we all have sort of the things that are personally important to us and things that we personally strongly believe in. And I think it's important somehow that, as a student athlete, you feel like you have some sort of like way to express that and to sort of use your platform for good. And just seeing the sort of, I briefly read the sort of like
Right.
comments and the logo. I think this is great, especially, I assume and I hope that the whole football team came together,
Yes.
the whole sort of like group of football players, and sort of unified together said that this is something that's important to us to sort of show unity in this time. And I think I only read the sort of words briefly and I didn't get to look for very long, but I think that this is sort of like hitting the nail right on the head. I think like now more than ever, it's an important time to sort of come together sort of like as a country and listen to each other and have sort of open and honest conversations and sort of recognize that we are sort of a unified front in this. And I think sometimes, especially these days, that can really get lost. And when you're sort of, when you try to divide yourself along certain, lines, whatever this may be, and you stop listening to each other, like only bad things can come from this, I feel.
Absolutely. And that's been one of the hallmarks, I think, of this recent movement has been, at least here in State College that I've noticed, is that our white student athletes are standing up right next to their black and their black counterparts. I've met Sean Clifford has been very visible and outspoken as part of the protests that happened here in State College. And so you're right. And this logo and this concept, if you will, did come about from the team getting together and making a team decision to do something like this in true Penn State fashion, right? I mean, that's how things happen here.
Yeah, and I have to say that it's being on a football team, especially like a college football team, it's this interesting balance between, and this is true of football, that's I feel is like somewhat different than other sports, different than basketball or other things, because you have this, okay, this is at least how I don't know what the right balance or what the right way to think about this is. You have some amount of your own self-expression, but somehow you also have some amount of sacrifice to recognize like being a part of a team, and that there is like this give and take between, especially in college football, I'd say between this sort of like individualism, but coming together as a team towards some shared goal or some shared sort of like desired outcome. And I found as a player, there's something really powerful in that.
John, you were recognized as the Alumni Achievement Award recipient recently. Talk a little bit about what being recognized by your alma mater means to you.
Yeah, it really means the world to me. I was honored when I heard about this. I can say that somehow Penn State it feels like home. No matter where I go, no matter what I do, Penn State really just always feels like a place where I don't know, where I belong, where I'm welcome. And coming back to Penn State for that event, really, it was a great experience for me, and it really meant a lot to me, I can say.
You've also begun serving on the Alumni Council, right? And is that why do you want to maintain that kind of a connection as an alumnus?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that as someone who has strongly benefited from sort of all that is Penn State, like I don't know about sort of alumni sort of watching, but I just, I have this feeling that Penn State gave me so much, and that I feel like I do have a responsibility to give back sort of when I can and however I can. And so when I was asked if I would do this, of course I said yes. And I'm very much new on the job. We've got our first like big meeting tomorrow, so I'm learning on the fly, but this is something that I'm really excited about.
Right. The council's meeting this whole weekend. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and John, we're excited to have you on Alumni Council. Your accomplishments have swelled thy fame of dear old state, and for that we're truly grateful. Thanks for joining us on Football Letter Live.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and thank you to everyone sort of watching and tuning in. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys later.
Take care, John.
Thank you.
Wow, John Black it's just always fantastic to catch up with John Urschel, and he's just you can't say success with honor and not have him immediately come to mind.
Him as the poster child for it. Yes, absolutely. Success with honor.
Absolutely. So, John, this week on the Football Letter blog, we're starting a series in which we'll take a look at Penn State's most memorable teams over the last 40 years. And the first team that we are profiling is the first national championship team. You had the opportunity to cover this team. What stands out to you about this?
Well, I think if we look at it, there was really an excellent build up to that 1982 team. In the 1980 and 81 seasons, Penn State compiled a 10-2 record in each of those years. In 1980, they lost only to number 3 Nebraska and to number 4 Pitt, and then proceeded to go on to the Fiesta Bowl and trounce Ohio State 31-19 and finish with a nice ranking in the national polls. The next year, they lost only to Miami and Alabama, then finished out their regular season by beating Notre Dame 24-21 and pounding number 1 Pitt 48-14. Now that's a game that itself is a top memorable game in the hearts of anybody who was following Penn State football before they got into the Big Ten, when they were still an independent and establishing their power not only as a regional power, but that whole run of seasons there, 80, 81, and culminating with the national championship in 82, really puts Penn State on the national map in collegiate football. After that 48-14 over number 1 Pitt, led by All-American Dan Marino, they went on to dominate USC and Heisman Trophy winner Marcus Allen in the Fiesta Bowl, again, 26-10, and got a number 3 national ranking. No wonder Penn State loves the Fiesta Bowl as much as the Fiesta Bowl loves Penn State. 7-0 there, seven times there and 7 wins. But I think that, as I say, there was a 3-year build up there, and it culminated in our first national championship, despite the fact that we had actually lost a game in the middle of that season. But roared back with 6 continuous wins and earned that right to take on then number 1 Georgia in the Sugar Bowl.
Right, and beat another Heisman Trophy there, and her Heisman Trophy winner in Herschel Walker.
Absolutely. We were famous at beating Heisman Trophy winners in bowl games.
Absolutely. John, you know what I'm struck by? I'm struck by your connection to Ridge Riley. And I think of Ridge Riley's book, The Road to Number One.
Right.
And we all know that Ridge passed a number of years before that 82 national championship, but he had to have been on your mind that season and had to have been on your mind that night in New Orleans.
Absolutely. It definitely was. I mean, God bless him. He did such a fantastic job establishing such a unique publication. No other alumni association in the world has such a publication. And he saw the need for it, the vision for what it could be. And it's just been such a great success for 82 years. And he researched that book for 6 years and had written the entire book except the last chapter. And he was, after that Sugar Bowl game, a loss to Alabama at the end of the 75 season, he was talking to Joe Paterno in his living room about that last season that was going to be the last chapter in his book. Unfortunately, he had a heart attack talking to Joe, wound up passing away at the young age of 70. I'm already 83. And his widow, Peg Riley, asked me if I would write that last chapter in the book, which I was honored to do. So because they had a contract with Doubleday to bring that book out in the spring of 1983. And I was just, I just always felt it was just not fair.
Right.
Ridge had done all that research, had been so loyal in following Penn State and building up the football letter and Penn State's football reputation and how much it meant to the university and how sports were simply an adjunct to the academic world at Penn State. But he never had the chance to see Penn State be declared a national champion. And within the first 11 years that I had the good fortune to be writing the football letter, I got to see 2 of those national championship teams. So yes, it was certainly on my mind how he was integrally wrapped up in that national championship team, even though he wasn't there to see it.
Absolutely. If you want to read more about the 1982 national championship team, the first in a series featuring the greatest teams in Penn State history, go out to the Football Letter blog today and you can read the entire post that's out there. Well, John, another great show. Looking ahead, what do you plan on covering in the next Football Letter?
Oh, I'm looking forward to covering a win over Indiana and a great start to the 2020 season. It's going to be a little different, as they say, covering it on television. And I'm not sure how we're going to get photographs, but hopefully we'll be able to get a few from the game. But it's a very different season. It'll be the latest that we've ever begun a season since 1918, when the pandemic of the Spanish flu held off the football season until November, and we only played a 4-game season on the Saturdays in November. But I'm thinking Penn State's ready to really make a run for it in the Big Ten this year, and hopefully even beyond the conference, and be a player in the national playoff.
Well, let's hope you're correct there. It would be great to make another run and be part of the conversation at the end of the season. That's all the time we have. We are wrapping up our time this evening. Though the conversation can continue on social media, visit us on Facebook and share why you started to become a Penn State fan, when you became a Penn State fan, your early memories. Share those memories with us on our Facebook page, and you can use the hashtag FBL Live. That's FBL Live on social media. Next week, the Football Letter Live. On our program, we're going to highlight Com Radio, the online station produced by students at the Donald P. Belisario College of Communications. They cover sports as good as any outlet across the country, or Penn State sports as good as any outlet across the country. And we look forward to bringing a couple of those students talking about the great work that they do covering Penn State sports right here on campus. Next week's schedule, Wednesday, we have another coffee hour. Check that out on Wednesday morning. and a lot of great programming. You can find it all at alumni.psu.edu. Thank you once again for joining us. Thanks for all you do for the university, for the glory, and for the future. We are
Penn State.